Welcome to Old Guys Gentlemen Flex Fountain Pens. This is episode number 25. What I'm going to be reviewing today is the Kustoms ink fountain pen. That is this pen right here, and the other pen is something that kind of led me to this pen, and it's a Kustoms Fountain K pen, I think, or K fountain pen. Anyhow, what's interesting about these pens that none of my other pens can do is survive in my pocket with this thing banging around on it. So this is part of my everyday carry, or this one was, and now this one will be. So, you know, all day long there's this going on, and I would never ever do that to, say, for instance, my Parker Vacuumatic. This one sits in a case when it travels. So these guys don't have to look pretty, even though I think they really have a nice look to them, but they're both brushed aluminum. So let me tell you a little bit how I got into this particular pen. I got this one first. I'd read some good reviews about how sturdy it was, and I know from my experience with collecting flipper knives that a stone-washed metal is less likely to show up scratches and dents and stuff. And so from a distance, which I won't demonstrate here, I mean, this thing looks pretty good, and it's when you get up close that you start to see some of the dings and scratches on it. But I've got no problem at all carrying this pen the way it looks or the way it will look in the future. This little thing right here did not come with the pen, but to me there's a design issue of some sort. Well, let me take that back. If you carry this like any normal person in your pocket, this will butt up against this nice and tight and you'll never have a problem. But when this sits next to this guy, and all day long doing this, it wants to unscrew it. And I had like 3 episodes of this unscrewing in my pocket. And, the good news is I only wear jeans, but now I now have 3 different jeans, so 3 different blue spots. So I had to come up with a fix. So I tried a bunch of things, and I don't mind. Probably should have a separate video on that if I haven't done that already. But essentially, I put some shrink fit, heat shrink tubing over it, held in place with a little bit of glue, and that just works great. It cinches down on there, and you have to put a little effort in to get it undone. So I really like this pen, and so what I wanted to do is it had a firm nib on it, and I'm getting to the point where I kind of abhor, loathe, detest firm nibs. Now that may change as I continue to collect pens, but to me a pen's not a good pen unless it flexes. So this one had a firm nib, and I was using it for a lot of different things. It was fine, but I really liked having something in my pocket that flexed. So I changed this up to a 14 karat nib. The original one was steel. They do make a titanium nib, and by the way, I think they're all Bach nibs. They make a titanium nib that flexes, but has a weird sensation, and it just looks like that's not going to be the kind of nib that I want to have. So I got the 14K nib, and there was a little mix-up, and they ended up sending me this 14K nib, which will not fit into this. This is a number 6, and I think this is a number 5. So I complained about it, and what they ended up doing is sending me the whole pen. I finally got it straightened out, and I was thinking of just getting the correct nib for this, which I ended up doing. That's the 14K nib right there. But I started loving this pen so much I just kept this. It's a real meaty pen, but I'll get into that. So the 14K nib on this guy on its own does spread a little bit. So So you can get also, there you go, you can kind of see the difference there. But it's not really a flex pen. I wouldn't use this as a flex pen. But I know there are nib grinders out there, and I've used some of them. There's only a few of them that will put flex in it, a couple that will re-tip it. In fact, the guy that I use successfully is a guy by the name of Greg Minushkin. He does really good, timely, affordable tipping. And then there are nib grinders. Almost all of them will thin down a nib or give you an oblique nib or italic nib and do those sorts of things and repair nibs that are bent and things like that. And I've used several different people for that, Greg being one of them and some others. But there's only a couple that will put extra flex into a nib by shaving down some of the material down here. And so this is an example of one done by John Modishaw at nibs.com. And he put basically a needle point on here. Is he ever going to talk about that other pen? But I'm getting to it. It basically thinned the material right in here and brought it to a point. And so this thing is this thing's pretty flexy. This is actually the picture for the Flexi Fountain Pens group page. It's this particular nib. I love this thing. So I wanted to do that for this particular pen, which also has a 14K nib on it. And the problem with nibs.com is the wait time is forever. If you buy a pen from them, it's not that bad because they give those priority. But if you want to send them pens in, I think people send quantities of pens in to have this done for them. They do a really good job. I think there's two people that work there. John is one of them. I forget the name of the other one. But I had also heard of MikeAtWork.com or Masuyama. There we go. So after some mail issues on my part, I finally got it straightened out, and he worked on this. His lead time is also getting fairly long. You can pay extra to have it expedited, but he's getting so busy lately that he's not doing that temporarily right now. I was lucky to catch him when the queue was not too long, and I think this took maybe about a month or so, and I paid extra for the expediting. And so what he did is this was a medium tip that he brought down to a needle point, and then over here he thinned. You can probably see that he thinned the material to make it kind of flexy. So let me show you how flexy is it. Well, let me tell you a little bit more about the pen. This is a hefty pen, especially compared to this one. It's definitely the heaviest one because it's all metal. The cap length on this thing is 13.7 centimeters. The posted length is kind of huge. Can't fit it all into the frame. Yeah, there we go. But the cap length or posted length is 17.6 centimeters, which makes it a little bit less than the safety Boston safety pen that I've got. The unposted length is a pretty comfortable length, although I like this on here, even though it's a lot heavier than the other pens. I kind of like that. It doesn't bother me a bit. In fact, I like it. But the unposted length is 12.7 centimeters. The section diameter is a nice, healthy 9 millimeters in the middle there. So the grip on this feels pretty good for me. And the barrel diameter is 14 millimeters, making it one of my fatter ones. I think the only guy who beats that is the Jinhao. As I said before, it's a 14K Bach nib medium that was ground for Spencerian. So let me show you how it writes. Usually I write this stuff ahead of time. So we'll see how this works doing it live on camera. All right. So usually when I'm checking out a pen, I do some light horizontal pen things. And that looks like it's like maybe a double extra fine. He called it a needle point. I wonder if that's needle point this way. Hold on. I could measure this with my glasses and my digital micrometer veneer. Let me see here. Needle point is triple extra fine. It's about that. It's hard to tell because the paper makes a difference, and any weight on this thing starts to change stuff. So I would call it probably, instead of needle point, maybe something like extra fine. Maybe with a drier ink and a harder paper, it would be needle point. But on the bold side, I know this is going to be beyond. It's well beyond triple bold. So getting back to this, then what I do to kind of get a contrast and comparison is do a light line, a little bit heavier, a little bit heavier. And this is truly a wet noodle that just went dry. These pens, it looks like I'm almost out of ink. I'm getting a little low on the ink there, though. And you can see it's really wet there. And then usually what I do is, some of these guys. And it almost takes no effort at all to move those tines. So I do have to be a little careful that I don't really need to ever do stuff this thick. In fact, I'm going to ease up a little bit when I do the hello. So it's really wet when you prime it like that, and so the line variation is really pretty good. The response probably isn't as good as vintage, and I never exactly sure. Sorry, we're going to take a break here and fill it full of ink. I was having a problem with the ink getting too low, so I switched over to one of my favorite inks here, this Pelikan 4001 turquoise. So I wonder how these things look now. Oh yeah, it's like gushy wet. There we go. Okay, we're going to check response on this. This is loose. I sprung it. Somebody should tell me the proper way of doing this. But what I do like to do is do like a Spencerian C. Broad, thin, broad, and thin. And so if I can do this, where I can get that line variation, sometimes on some of the newer pens when they modify these guys, it takes a lot longer to get it back. But it necks down pretty quickly. Got to be careful when I was doing that because that's what I was doing before when it sprung. So anyhow, it's nice and smooth too for being such a it makes that scratchy noise, but and it just feels smooth. So I'm meandering enough here. So that completes this review. I'm really happy, but I am recognizing that this nib is very sensitive and I have to be sensitive with it. Otherwise, it'll just be a bent piece of metal. And I think that's it. Hope you got some value out of it.